Isn't it funny how life works? I see two films that are easy candidates for the worst films of 2016, and then I go and see two movies that are absolutely great. First it's Deadpool, now I get to talk about The Witch. So The Witch is the newest horror film to come out in theaters. And yes, it is a 2015 film because it was featured in Sundance, but it was released in theaters in 2016, so it's a 2016 movie. The Witch is about a family of settlers that get exiled and have to live somewhere else. This family finds a nice place by the woods and decide to settle there. Unfortunately, there may be a witch living out in the woods. And so now this family has to deal with the consequences of this witch. So that's the basic premise of The Witch, and I have to say it was a very gratifying movie to see. Now I have to warn you, The Witch is very polarizing. You're either going to absolutely hate it or you're going to love it. Thankfully, I'm in the love it category. Now whatever you do, don't go into this film thinking it's a very conventional horror movie or even your modern day horror film. Now if you're one of the generation that loves jump scares, loves monsters popping out at you, and you think that is the only way to scare people, trust me, I know a few people that feel that the only good scare is a jump scare. I'm still friends with them. I completely disagree, but I'm still friends with them. Then The Witch is definitely not for you, because this is one of your older school horror films where it's more atmospheric, it's more about the music, the atmosphere, the lighting, the creepy, disturbing imagery. It's not all about jump scares and the witch being up in your face. In fact, if you go into this film thinking, oh, we're just going to see a witch terrorizing a family and it's going to be all about that, to be honest, yes, the witch does some things to this family, but if you include the thing at the end, the witch only does 3 things to the family. In fact, the family tears itself apart because of these events. So it's not really a witch terrorizing a family and them having to survive these terrible attacks from a witch, but instead it's more about a witch doing something to the family and the family having to cope with the aftermath of those effects, as well as this family tearing itself apart, blaming themselves, considering themselves sinners, and going all crucible where they're accusing each other of being the witch rather than the person in the woods, which, quite frankly, only 2 people in the family members ever see the witch, and for reasons I won't discuss, they're unable to talk about the witch. And so for most of the family, they don't even know a witch is in the woods. Instead, they have to blame each other. So that's one thing that might discourage people from going to the witch if you hear this. Another thing, it's all Old English speech. Now granted, I understood everything they were saying except for the points when they would pray and the points where more of them would talk over each other. You already have to focus on what they're saying to understand most of it from time to time, but sometimes they speak so fast that it just goes right over your head. At least for me it did, but overall I understood them more than I understood Tom Hardy in The Revenant. So if those are things that discourage you from seeing The Witch and thinking that, okay, this might be a bad movie, then you might not like the film. But if you're like me and you don't mind those things, I encourage you to try The Witch, because I really enjoyed it. Again, you really shouldn't expect conventional horror when you know that it's a Sundance film. And you know that genre pieces from that film festival that get noticed mainly have something artistic about them, something more dramatic, something more character-driven. And that's exactly what The Witch is. There is some really great cinematography, really great environmental lighting and creepy atmosphere. The acting is phenomenal all across the board, especially when they had to have such dialogue that oftentimes can seem really unnatural, really uncomfortable, really look like they don't know exactly what they're saying. But all the actors, including the child actors, actually spoke it so fluently, so naturally, that it felt real. And so I have to give the props to the actors for that. That alone makes them really great in this film. Not only that, but they all brought their A game. They all really acted well. The score was very eerie, very tense. Sometimes it may get a little overdramatic because it feels like the same kind of opera that 2000 Space Odyssey with the Black Monolith. Like some of it feels like that and sometimes feels a little too over the top for the scene that it's in. But really, overall, the music really helped with this dark atmosphere. At its heart, this is more of a period drama and more like The Crucible, despite actually having horror elements within it. And it's because of that fact that the drama, the characters, I really got involved with the characters and the drama, really felt invested, and never felt bored with the movie, despite it not having too much of the witch. You can either think, oh my god, that's weird, disturbing, uncomfortable, really gross, or some of the disturbing imagery and some of the horror elements of the film could make you laugh if you think it's too weird and just too out there. Again, that's one of the polarizing things about this film. It depends on what you think is disturbing, what you think is scary. Otherwise, you're going to either laugh or actually be cringing and just, oh my god. One moment that comes in mind is this rabbit. There's this rabbit that shows up probably about 3 times within the film. And I have to say, that rabbit made me uncomfortable at times and sometimes made me just give a nervous laugh. And kudos for the film for making a rabbit seem intimidating and scary. But I can see why people might think, oh my god, that's just weird, hilarious, I can't take this seriously because it's a rabbit. But I have to say, this rabbit has no fear. The first time it shows this rabbit is they're out hunting and they see a rabbit, so he gets ready to fire and this rabbit just stares him down. This dog's barking at it, he's aiming his rifle, and this rabbit's just still just staring at it. It's got like crooked eyes almost, because that's what rabbits have, like weird eyes to begin with. And it's just staring at him, and it's really creepy. See, those are the things that are either going to work for you or not at all. Now, for instance, there's this one scene that didn't work for me all that much. It built up really nicely, and there's this moment where I understand what's happening, I understand why they went this route, but at the same time it was like, ugh. And it's not because it's a flaw, it's just because it's one of those things where it's polarizing. You're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. And for me, I was sort of in the middle. Is this scene where one of the characters comes back after being captured by the witch. So you have this scene where this person has a spell put on him, and the whole family's trying to pray for this person to bring him back to his normal self. And so you almost have a possession-like scene, but not quite possession because it's not possession. So it builds up really well, but then there's this moment where this person is like seeing the light sort of thing, and I couldn't understand most of it because he was talking so fast, but it's almost like the interpretation of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And so he's like mesmerized by it and he's joyous, and sometimes that speech just got a little too cheesy. I love the Crucible style of this film, how there's a lot of paranoia, the family is dysfunctional, they start blaming each other, their sins start coming out into the light. It builds nicely until the final climax of the film, which is really great. I also love the fact that this movie went completely old school with the witches. Like, it has all the same folklore of those types of witches, and so if you've seen or read The Crucible, you pretty much know what kind of witch you're getting. Like, it has the whole thing where you have to sign a pact with the devil in order to become a witch. There's certain things in this film that witches can do to really gain the attention of the devil, such as the first act the witch does, which isn't shown, but if you know exactly what you're getting with the folklore of the witches, you pretty much know exactly what's going to happen. Even if you don't know the folklore, it gives you enough clues where you can figure it out yourself if you think about it. And I'm just going to say that is one of the most horrific, disturbing things about the film, is the whole act of what happens at the beginning.
Boo! There you are. Boo!
Just like most of this film, the ending could be very polarizing to some as well. I've heard people say that it was the worst ending ever. People say, oh, this was a great ending. Other people say, this is just weird, crazy, didn't like it whatsoever. Personally, I liked the ending. It felt true to the story that it was trying to tell. It felt natural for the character to make this decision. And even though it's mostly in the shadow, I love the expressions on our main character's face as this event is happening, which I'm not going to spoil for you, but the expressions on her face in the last clip of the movie, it's just great, and it shows a lot of conflicting emotions throughout. She feels power, she feels scared, she feels guilt. All this stuff is shown on her face, as she's like breathing heavily. And so I can totally see people missing that complex expressions within her face at the very end because there's a lot of shadow. And if you're not one of those people that are looking at expressions and trying to study the things that are going on through the actor, then you can definitely miss that complexity of the film. Personally, she knocked it out of the park for me. Again, this is a movie that you're going to either love or hate, and I hope I gave enough information that if you haven't seen the film, this will better give you more information on whether this is the film for you or not the film for you at all. Because basically that's what movie reviews are for. They're not only just to give opinions of the film, and ultimately the rating of the film doesn't really matter. What matters in the review is giving enough information for the viewers to get an understanding of what this film is like and if that's the film for them to see. Personally, I really love The Witch, but because of one scene that I didn't quite like as much as the rest of it, I'm going to have to give The Witch 4.5 stars. So did you see The Witch? What did you think about it? Did you think it was one of the worst horror movies you've ever seen? Did you think it was one of the greatest horror movies you've ever seen? Because most likely it's going to be one of those two. There's probably going to be very few people right in the middle. And if you like this video, please subscribe and check out my other videos. I've got 2015 and 2016 movie reviews. And as always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was just my opinion.